Most leaders fail not because they lack ambition, but because they remain surrounded by noise. Opinions, validation, and weakness disguised as loyalty. In a world where everyone seeks to belong, true power demands the courage to stand alone. This is not solitude, it's strategy. The crowd breeds comfort, and comfort breeds obedience. The wise understand that influence cannot flourish in the midst of equals. The crowd infects the mind, dulls the will, and corrupts judgment. To lead, truly lead, one must become an observer, not a participant. Isolation is not exile, it is refinement. It's where clarity sharpens like a blade, and where emotion withers before reason's command. In this world of constant noise and empty approval, those who withdraw are not lost. They are calculating. This is the psychology of isolation, the crucible where leaders are forged and followers dissolve. The crowd is the most dangerous illusion ever created. It seduces you with belonging, yet poisons your judgment with noise. You see, most men never think for themselves. They think through others, absorbing emotions, mimicking opinions, and calling it conviction. But conviction borrowed from the crowd is nothing but cowardice wearing the mask of certainty. Look around you. Every age has its mobs. Ancient, modern, digital. They chant, they outrage, they follow trends as if obedience were virtue. And yet in all their unity, they remain powerless. Why? Because the crowd cannot think. It can only feel. And feelings, when shared in masses, are easily manipulated. The Romans knew this. Bread and circuses, the perfect formula to control the public mind. Feed their appetites, entertain their senses, and they will never question who holds the reins. The masses were kept docile, distracted, predictable, and those who sought true power learned to step above them, not beside them. Isolation, then, becomes the first act of awakening. When you detach from the crowd, you begin to hear the faint hum of your own reason. But that silence terrifies most people. They rush back into the noise because solitude exposes truth, and truth is rarely comforting. Think of the philosopher who dared to question the herd. Socrates walked among the people of Athens, yet he never belonged to them. He dissected their beliefs until they turned against him. They couldn't tolerate his clarity, so they silenced him. Isolation was his crime, but also his greatness. You, too, live among modern Athenians. Only now, the mob lives inside your screen. A digital chorus of opinions, trends, and fragile egos screaming for validation. The modern man is never alone. And that is precisely why he cannot lead. Leadership begins when you resist the urge to merge. When you stop seeking agreement and start cultivating clarity. To lead is to see what others refuse to look at, and to speak truths that others fear to whisper. But to do that, you must first escape contamination. Psychology calls it social conformity. Humans, wired for survival, mimic the group to avoid exclusion. It's ancient, primal, automatic. When the crowd laughs, you smile. When they rage, you echo their anger. When they fear, you shrink. And in that instant, you are no longer yourself. Now imagine the power of one who refuses that reflex. The one who watches while others react. The one who questions when others agree. That man is dangerous. Not because he is cruel, but because he is independent. He cannot be led by slogans, nor broken by isolation. He becomes a ruler of minds because he first ruled his own. Machiavelli observed this in the courts of Florence. He watched nobles crumble under the weight of public approval, altering every decision to please allies, servants, or the mob beyond the palace gates. Those men believed leadership was popularity. They mistook applause for power. And so, they were devoured by the very masses they tried to charm. You cannot command what you seek to please. The moment you crave their affection, you become their slave. Ask yourself, do you speak to be understood, or do you speak to be approved? Do you lead to shape the world, or merely to avoid its rejection? The crowd rewards comfort, not truth. They will cheer you when you echo their weakness, and crucify you when you expose it. So let them. Let their noise become the backdrop to your silence. Every great mind, every strategist, conqueror, and philosopher learned this lesson early. Caesar crossed the Rubicon not with a chorus, but with a few loyal men and an unshakable mind. He understood that power is not found in numbers, but in conviction unpolluted by the mob. Isolation gave him the vision to act while others hesitated. Do not misunderstand. Isolation is not abandonment. It's observation. It's the art of stepping back far enough to see the entire board while others fixate on a single piece. When you distance yourself, you gain the one advantage the crowd will never have: perspective. You begin to notice patterns, motives, weaknesses. You start to think like a ruler, not a participant. But here's the irony: the more you separate from the crowd, the more they will seek your attention. Mystery draws them. They will gossip, speculate, envy, anything to pull you back into their chaos. Resist. Your silence is your crown, because the crowd feeds on reaction. Deny it, and you starve their power. Feed it, and you lose your own. And that is the first secret of isolation. Before you can command the world, you must learn to walk away from it. In the next lesson, we'll explore how distance itself, when used deliberately, becomes not loneliness, but leverage. Stay in the shadows. The game is only beginning. To rule effectively, you must learn to see, not merely to look. And to see clearly, you must create distance. Distance is not withdrawal. It is strategy. It is the art of removing yourself just enough from the battlefield to observe its entire design. The fool believes power is exercised by constant presence. He attends every meeting, joins every conversation, inserts himself into every conflict, and in doing so, loses authority. He becomes too visible, too accessible, too common. But the wise understand the more you are seen, the less you are respected. True influence grows in absence. When others cannot easily reach you, they begin to imagine your power. And imagination is far more persuasive than truth. Consider the prince who walks among his subjects daily, laughing, shaking hands, seeking approval. At first, they love him. But soon, familiarity erodes his mystique. Every smile costs him a measure of awe. Every shared opinion makes him smaller in their eyes. The prince becomes one of them. And once he does, he can no longer command them. So ask yourself, how visible are you to those you wish to lead? How much access do you grant to your thoughts, your time, your emotions? Every open door diminishes your power. History has always rewarded those who mastered distance. When Alexander planned his campaigns, he did not discuss strategy with the rank and file. He appeared only when victory was certain. Descending like a storm, the soldiers could admire but never fully understand. That mystery kept them loyal, kept them believing his will was divine. Distance does not mean detachment from reality. It means positioning yourself above it. It means learning to move between worlds, the crowd and the throne, without belonging to either. Think of the chessboard. A pawn sees what's directly ahead. But the king, he surveys the board in silence. Every piece moves for him, but he moves for no one. That is the essence of strategic distance. In psychological terms, distance creates perceived authority. Humans are wired to obey what feels unreachable. A silent figure in the room commands more respect than a voice that fills it. Mystery is mistaken for depth, restraint for wisdom. It is a form of manipulation as ancient as leadership itself. The modern mind has forgotten this art. People overshare their thoughts, expose their routines, display their weaknesses in the name of authenticity. They confuse transparency with strength. But power thrives on opacity. The less they know about you, the more they project, and their projection becomes your weapon. Imagine two leaders. One is everywhere, smiling, posting, explaining. The other speaks rarely, appears unexpectedly, and never reveals his full intent. Which one do you find more intriguing? Which one feels more dangerous, more commanding? Exactly. Distance amplifies importance. It forces others to chase your presence, to earn your attention. And in that pursuit, they give you their power willingly. But let's go deeper. Strategic distance is not only external, it is internal. It is the discipline of separating your mind from the chaos around you. When emotion floods the room, you observe. When others react, you calculate. When they speak, you listen not for truth, but for weakness. You become untouchable, not by strength of muscle, but by mastery of perspective. In Florence, the courtier who reacted quickly was always the first to fall. The one who waited, who allowed others to expose themselves before striking, endured. Distance gives time. Time gives clarity, and clarity is the most lethal advantage of all. So when conflict arises, do not rush. When insulted, do not respond. When provoked, smile in silence. Let them drown in their own noise while you stand still in calm calculation. That stillness, that deliberate delay unsettles them. They mistake it for weakness until it becomes their undoing. Distance also guards your energy. Every argument avoided, every meeting declined, every emotional reaction withheld, saves a fragment of your power. Over time, these fragments form an empire of composure, and those who scatter their attention across every disturbance will serve that empire, whether they know it or not. Understand this: to lead from within the crowd is to drown in it. To lead from above it, unseen, unhurried, unbothered, is to command it effortlessly. But there is a danger. Too much distance breeds detachment. Withdraw too far, and you lose influence altogether. The art lies in balance. Close enough to understand, far enough to control. The lion must roar to remind the jungle he exists, but the echo, not the noise, is what haunts the prey. So choose your appearances like a king chooses wars, rarely and always to conquer. Let your silence create anticipation. Let your absence whisper of power. And when you finally act, make it decisive enough to silence 1,000 voices. Because in the theater of power, proximity weakens, but distance, when mastered, commands. In the next lesson, we turn inward, to the one barrier that remains even after you've left the crowd: your emotions. And if you cannot isolate them, then every strategy you build will still belong to someone else. Power demands cold hands. It does not thrive in warmth nor sentiment. It lives where emotion dies, and where reason reigns without mercy. To master others, you must first master yourself. And to master yourself, you must learn the cruelest art of all: emotional detachment. You were taught that passion inspires, that empathy builds connection, that to feel deeply makes you human. But remember this: the more you feel, the easier you are to control. Every manipulator, every ruler, every deceiver knows this simple truth: emotions are levers. Pull the right one: fear, love, guilt, pride, and even the strongest man will move as you wish. Ask yourself, how many decisions have you made out of anger? How many times have you spoken from hurt, from desire, from fear of loss? Each time you did, someone else, unseen, owned your will. Emotional detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the discipline to feel and yet remain untouched. It is to stand in the storm and not be moved by the thunder. Consider the generals of history. Alexander wept for fallen friends, yes, but never during battle. Julius Caesar could charm his soldiers with affection, then send them into death without hesitation. They understood emotion as a tool, not a master. The crowd calls such men heartless. They are wrong. They possess hearts, only locked behind iron walls of purpose. Because when the fate of kingdoms rests on your judgment, sentiment becomes treason. Psychology reveals that emotion narrows focus. When you're angry, your vision tunnels. When you're afraid, you retreat. When you're in love, you idealize. Emotion clouds reality, and the one who controls reality controls the game. So what happens when you learn to detach? When insults no longer provoke you? When flattery no longer sways you? When affection no longer blinds you? You become unreadable, unpredictable, unbreakable. Your calm unsettles them. They test you, provoke you, but your stillness becomes their mirror, reflecting their own chaos. They grow anxious, they lose control, and in that imbalance you gain power. Imagine a negotiation. Two men sit across the table. One reacts to every offer, sighs, gestures, reveals his urgency. The other remains still, his expression unreadable, his tone even. Which one commands the room? The answer is always the one who feels least. In emotional detachment, there is authority, because detachment signals dominance over the self, and those who cannot rule themselves instinctively obey those who can. Yet detachment is not born from apathy. It is forged through discipline, the slow, deliberate killing of unnecessary reactions. It begins with observation. When you feel anger, study it. When you feel desire, delay it. When you feel fear, dissect it until it loses form. Over time, emotion becomes information, not impulse. You no longer react to the world, you read it. And once you can read it, you can rewrite it. The ancients called this ataraxia, a state of inner calm, untouchable by fortune or chaos. The Stoics practiced it as virtue, the rulers wielded it as weapon. For when the world burns around you and you remain still, you appear divine. People will call you cold. Let them. Their warmth makes them predictable. They are slaves to the tides of their own feelings, constantly pulled between affection and anger, fear and desire. They confuse motion for meaning, while you, unmoved, steer the current itself. Think of the manipulator who exploits pity. He confesses weakness, feigns emotion, draws you in. You lower your guard, he wins. But if your empathy is controlled, if you observe his tears without drowning in them, you strip him of his weapon. Your calm becomes armor. Even love, the most intoxicating illusion, demands distance. To love without losing yourself, that is rare. To love and still be capable of walking away, that is power. Because the moment another can dictate your happiness, they own a portion of your soul. Emotional detachment does not make you cruel. It makes you clear. It allows you to see people not as you wish they were, but as they truly are, vessels of motive, fear, and desire. And when you see them clearly, you can guide them effortlessly. Understand this: control of emotion is control of perception. Control of perception is control of reality. And he who controls reality rules. But this control comes with a cost. You will stand apart from others. Your calm will isolate you. Your stillness will be mistaken for arrogance. But remember, power is always lonely. So ask yourself, would you rather be loved and weak, or feared and free? Because in the next lesson, you will see how your silence, your mystery, and your deliberate absence can make others obey without a single command. Is the next step in the psychology of power. Power is not always taken by force. Often, it is given. To those who seem to know what others cannot see. Mystery is the invisible crown that bends minds without ever needing a sword. The less they know of you, the more they will imagine. And what they imagine will always be greater, darker, or more divine than the truth could ever be. The crowd does not crave clarity, it craves fascination. It does not respect what it understands, it worships what it cannot define. Think of the old kings. They appeared rarely, cloaked in gold and silence. Their faces half hidden, their words carefully measured. The people saw not a man, but a myth, because mystery amplifies presence. When the king finally spoke, his words cut through the air like prophecy. Contrast that with the leader who speaks endlessly, explaining, justifying, exposing his thoughts to the crowd. Soon his voice loses weight, his transparency becomes weakness. He ceases to command awe, because the known can no longer be feared. Tell me, who would you follow? The one whose every thought is public? Or the one whose silence makes you question what he's planning next? Control begins in the shadows. What they cannot read, they cannot predict. And what they cannot predict, they cannot resist. The art of power, then, lies not in constant visibility, but in deliberate concealment. To hold influence, you must become partially invisible. Present, yet unreadable. History is filled with such figures. The Italian princes who said little but were known everywhere. The cardinals who smiled but never revealed loyalty. The rulers who hid their intentions until the moment of strike. They understood that mystery breeds fear, and fear breeds obedience. Even in our age, the same law applies. Think of those who dominate the modern stage. The silent CEO, the unpredictable politician, the artist who vanishes at their peak. Absence becomes allure. Ambiguity becomes power. People talk, speculate, invent stories, all while strengthening the legend of the one who says nothing. You might think, but won't silence make me irrelevant? Only if your silence lacks intention. Strategic silence is not emptiness. It is a mirror. It reflects others' insecurities, ambitions, and fears until they reveal themselves to you. When you speak less, others fill the void. They expose motives, betray allies, overplay their confidence, and while they talk, you calculate. Mystery makes you the axis of uncertainty. Everyone revolves around you, trying to decipher what you are thinking. And in that confusion, you quietly move the pieces. Psychology confirms this. Humans fear ambiguity because the unknown feels dangerous. Their minds seek patterns, answers, closure. When they cannot define you, their imagination does the work. And imagination exaggerates. They assign you more power than you possess, simply to calm their own discomfort. That is the brilliance of mystery. It magnifies you without effort. In relationships, it creates desire. In leadership, it creates authority. In strategy, it creates paralysis. Your opponents hesitate because they cannot predict your next move. Let me tell you a story. In Florence, there was a diplomat who never revealed his true stance in any council. He agreed with everyone and no one at once. When conflict arose, both sides claimed he supported them. Neither attacked, fearing his hidden allegiance. He controlled both factions without commanding either. That is the essence of mystery, ruling without revealing. But there is danger in excess. Too much mystery, and you become distant, forgotten. Too little, and you become ordinary. The art lies in balance. Reveal enough to stay visible, conceal enough to stay feared. Think of the moon. It glows because part of it is always hidden. Show everything, and the light dies. To practice mystery, start small. Speak less than you know. Act without explanation. Allow your plans to unfold without announcement. Let them wonder how you move so silently. When questioned, answer with half-truths, not lies but fragments. Let curiosity become your herald. They will talk. They will guess. And while they do, you'll remain untouchable. Remember, explanation kills power. Once they understand your method, they can predict it. Once they predict it, they can resist it. Keep your motives layered, your timing uncertain, your emotions hidden. Let your unpredictability become their anxiety. Their confusion will serve you better than their loyalty ever could. Because those who understand you may challenge you, but those who cannot define you will fear to even try. So step back into the shadows. Let your silence whisper louder than your words. Let your distance make them kneel. And when they finally look up, searching for your next move, you'll already be standing where they never expected you to be. In the next lesson, we'll uncover the final secret, how solitude itself, the realm of the sovereign mind, becomes the birthplace of every empire. There is a loneliness that no crown can cure. It is not sadness, it is sovereignty. The higher you rise, the fewer voices you can trust, and the fewer voices you trust, the more silence becomes your ally. That silence is where the sovereign mind is born. Every empire begins in isolation. Before armies march, before followers gather, there is one mind, alone, shaping reality in thought. Power, you see, is conceived in solitude and executed in public. But most never make it past the first stage. They fear being alone with themselves. They crave noise, validation, company, all the things that dilute clarity, and so they remain part of the crowd they wish to command. Ask yourself, when was the last time you truly stood apart? Not distracted, not scrolling, not performing, but alone, thinking as if your thoughts mattered to history. Solitude is the crucible where rulers are forged. It burns away weakness, vanity, and fear until only purpose remains. Consider Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who commanded millions, yet wrote his wisdom not to others, but to himself, alone under candlelight. He led armies by day, but ruled his mind by night. That is the paradox of power. To master the world, you must first master your own silence. The masses confuse solitude with loneliness because they depend on others to define them. Their worth is borrowed from attention, their confidence from approval. They are never alone because they cannot survive without noise. But the sovereign mind is different. It seeks solitude not to escape the world, but to control it from a distance. In that silence, it organizes thoughts like soldiers, assembles strategies like armies, and plans conquests unseen. Isolation becomes not a retreat, but a fortress, a place where the self cannot be invaded. Psychology tells us that solitude activates the deepest layers of cognition: creativity, foresight, reflection. In stillness, the brain reorganizes chaos into pattern. What others see as emptiness, the strategist sees as a field of possibilities. Look at the great minds of history: Da Vinci sketching his inventions in secrecy, Napoleon pacing alone in his tent before dawn, envisioning entire battles before a single shot was fired. They understood isolation sharpens perception. It allows you to see what constant company blinds you to. Even in manipulation, solitude has power. The one who withdraws controls the emotional dynamic. When you step back, others lean forward. When you go silent, they reveal themselves. Your absence forces them to fill the void, and in that rush they expose their motives. But beware, solitude must be chosen, not inflicted. The exile who isolates out of bitterness grows delusional. The strategist who isolates out of intention grows dangerous. To isolate well, you must anchor yourself in purpose. Ask, why do I seek this distance? If the answer is control, refinement, clarity, then your solitude will empower you. If it is fear, avoidance, or despair, it will consume you. Remember, the sovereign mind is not detached from humanity, it simply stands above its illusions. It observes love without dependency. It observes conflict without rage. It observes praise without intoxication, and in doing so, it becomes unshakable. The crowd lives in reaction. The ruler lives in reflection. That is why history remembers one and forgets the other. Do not mistake this path for comfort. Isolation will strip you bare. It will expose weaknesses you never knew existed. It will demand discipline few possess. But when you emerge, you will carry something the world cannot take from you: inner authority. That authority is not given by rank or title. It is the quiet conviction that your thoughts, your will, and your vision need no permission to exist. That conviction bends others, even without words. Think of the commander who walks into a room without speaking. Why does everyone fall silent? Because his presence is forged from solitude. He has no need to prove himself. He carries the weight of a mind that stands alone. In this world, independence of thought is rebellion. To think freely is to separate yourself from the collective, and that separation, though it feels like exile, is actually ascension. So do not fear being misunderstood. Do not chase belonging. Let them question your distance. Let them call you cold. While they seek comfort, you will be building dominion. Because solitude is not the end of connection. It is the beginning of control. The man who rules his own mind no longer needs the approval of others to validate his power. And the one who no longer needs is the one others will always need. But this mastery comes with one final test. When your solitude gives birth to strength, you must decide, will you use it to rule others or to transcend them entirely? That is the final paradox of power, and it awaits you in the next lesson, where isolation no longer builds kingdoms but destroys them. Power is never loud. It whispers. It hides behind kindness, behind reason, behind what others think was their own choice. To control people without them knowing, you do not push, you guide. You plant ideas like seeds in their vanity and let them believe they bloomed on their own. Influence is not domination, it is invisible design. The puppet never hates the puppeteer he cannot see. Ask yourself, how many of your decisions were truly yours? How many times have you obeyed a will disguised as your own desire? That is the real hierarchy of this world: those who act, and those who think they act. Learn to be the architect of perception. Hide your power behind silence. Let others move while you remain still, unseen, but obeyed. If you see the truth in this, comment your thoughts below. Subscribe to sharpen your strategy, and share this video so others may never realize who's truly in control.